Big news, everyone. The Society of Massage Archives is officially a 501c3 nonprofit. Greetings. I am Kirby Clark Ellis, president of the Society of Massage Archives. This is a huge milestone, not just for us at SOMA, but for the entire massage therapy community. SOMA is dedicated to preserving and sharing the rich history of our profession, from rare documents and forgotten pioneers to the stories that have shaped this vital practice. We are making sure that our past is never lost. And now, as an official nonprofit, your support of the Society of Massage Archives means more than ever. Your donations are tax deductible, helping us to collect, digitize, and share the untold stories of massage therapy. Want to be a part of history? Here's how you can help. Become a founding supporter. Join our Founders Campaign and be recognized as one of the first 50 donors who made SOMA possible. Or become a recurring contributor when you pledge $20 or more to help us build and sustain this initiative for generations to come. Finally, you can help us out a great deal by spreading the word. Share this video and encourage others to preserve massage history. Your support ensures that future generations of therapists know where we came from and where we're going. Join the Founders Campaign today at societyofmassagearchives.org and make history with us. The past is in our hands. Let's preserve it, one story at a time.
One final note before we begin today's episode. Unfortunately, in reviewing and editing this video, I've discovered that there are some slight audio discrepancies throughout the recording. I've done my best to make this interview as polished, understandable, and complete as possible for your viewing and listening experience. I hope the recording will not be distracting or disengaging. There is still a lot of great information that has been packed into this conversation with Dr. Amanda Baskwill. We appreciate your understanding and patience with the situation and hope you still enjoy this episode.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Society of Massage Archives. These interviews and commentaries represent the recollections of both the hosts and the guests, and as such, are subject to the occasional slight inaccuracies. The content here is for informational and educational purposes only. You should conduct your own historical research when determining the veracity of any of the statements made within.
Greetings, and welcome to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives, where we delve into the rich tapestry of massage therapy's past, explore its evolution, and share the stories that have shaped this vital practice. Today is Monday, October 27th, 2025. I am your host, Kirby Clark Ellis, and I'm joined today with Amanda Baskwill. Dr. Amanda Baskwill is a massage therapist, educator, and academic leader whose career has been deeply rooted in advancing the profession of massage therapy in Canada and beyond. With over 2 decades of experience, she has worn many hats: clinician, educator, researcher, author, and advocate. Her contributions include curriculum leadership in massage therapy education, government advocacy for professional regulation, and research that bridges clinical practice and evidence-informed care. Amanda's work has consistently focused on elevating the profession's visibility, credibility, and integration within broader health systems. Currently serving as the Senior Vice President, Academic and Chief Learning Officer at Loyalist College, Amanda continues to support the growth of health and wellness professions through strategic leadership and innovation. She is also the executive editor and editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Therapeutic Massage and Bodywork, the IJTMB, where she champions scholarly work that reflects the complexity and potential of massage therapy. A passionate storyteller and mentor, Amanda brings a reflective lens to her own professional journey and the evolving history of massage therapy, making her an insightful voice in conversations about where the profession has been and where we're headed. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here today. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited. I'm glad that I think we decided that it was Pam Fitch that recommended that we talk to you. So I am so glad to have you here. I know we've been in conversations for a while now trying to get this set up.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, I can't wait to learn more about you myself. But let's start back at the beginning. Tell me, what pulled you into massage therapy?
For sure. To go back to the very beginning, I have to take you back to when I was 3. So when I was 3, I started in ballet, and I went through a performing career as a youth. I entered into pre-professional education or ballet training at 14 and moved throughout my career. And unfortunately, I had a lot of injuries, especially lower leg injuries. And through that journey, I saw all kinds of health professionals, chiropractors, sports physicians, physiotherapists primarily, and they all within their scope tried to help and gave me different things to approach. But it wasn't until I saw the massage therapist, and she actually sat down and she talked me through what was happening and why I kept getting injured, that I would like to say I was injury free. I wasn't, but that I really started to understand what was happening in my body and have some ability and some ownership over it. And so fast forward a few years later, when I decided to leave the profession of dance and my parents asked me, what are you going to do next? Massage therapy was the thing that came to mind. And I really wanted to be able to give back and help people understand their bodies, just like that massage therapist had done for me. So that is how I came to massage therapy, and from that decision went into a massage therapy program, and have been advocating and in the profession ever since.
Tell me, Amanda, how long were you in practice? Because you took us back all the way to 3 years old. Even for me, 3 years old, that's a long time ago from now. So how long were you in a performance space?
So I was in dance for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 15, a little bit longer. Yeah.
Okay. And so around what time, in terms of an actual date, year or so, when did the switch from performance, ballet, dance move into massage therapy for you?
So I entered into my massage therapy program in 2000. So it was just a little bit before that, when I was transitioning out of dance, figuring out what was going to happen next, and started applying to programs.
Was there anything that you really weren't expecting in terms of working with that massage therapist? Did you have preconceptions of what massage therapy might look like from all these other forms of treatment that you'd been seeking for your body?
I really didn't. So at the time, massage therapy was not something that I was really well aware of. I was aware of massage as a therapeutic practice through my physiotherapist, who used it a little bit. But no, I really didn't know what to think. And because my first experience with the massage therapist was in sort of that physiotherapy practice, I kind of didn't know they were a massage therapist until they started talking to me and explaining to me what they did and what their scope was and how that was different from what I experienced in physiotherapy. So I was a clean slate. I really hadn't given much thought to massage therapy and hadn't really layered anything on top of it.
Gotcha. All right. Maybe that's for the best.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, well, it sounds like you had pretty successful treatment with this massage therapist that perhaps you weren't seeing results from with these other practitioners. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. And I don't know, maybe it's stereotypical of massage therapy, but it was really the time she spent with me. So with some of those other practitioners, and not a criticism, just sharing what my experience was, I was in a room with multiple people and we were all kind of set up on what our treatment plan was. So put on the ultrasound machine or the TENS machine and kind of let that happen. This person took me aside, sat me down, pointed at charts on the wall, had me do movements, talked me through what they were seeing and what they understood from my file, and then engaged in treatment with me. So it was just a different way of talking about things. And even in dance, one of the things that I was always really interested in was muscles and joints and movement and how that all came together from the artistic perspective, but also from sort of the science anatomy perspective. And so that approach really resonated with me. And it may not be a statement on the other professions, but the practitioners I engage with hadn't done that. They really hadn't told me much about what they were doing or seeing. They just kind of engaged me in that treatment and then got to the next person. And it was a busy physiotherapy clinic, lots of dancers who were needing care. And so it was just a different experience that I hadn't had before.
I like what you're saying. The way I'm going to, kind of paraphrase it is, it sounds like a lot of the other treatment you were getting at the time was formulaic, kind of set it and forget it, let the patient or the client do their own sort of figure it out their own way, give them like these parameters. And a way that I've been thinking about massage therapy lately is more so being a guide and really being there and being present with the person that's seeking treatment from you.
This might be one of the biases, but for me, it was very much about education, right? Taking the time to educate people and empower them to be more in charge of their own health.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, I'm going to jump our timeline just a little bit here, Amanda, because I have an opportunity to ask you. You mentioned in particular that you were having quite a bit of injuries to your lower legs. I'm going to kind of ask you where you're at right now in terms of your understanding of research. Do we know a whole lot about lower leg injuries in terms of massage therapy?
Not a ton specifically. It's not a space that we necessarily spend a lot of time in, but I think the other areas that we have seen, so chronic lower back injuries and things like that, there's a lot of similarities, not necessarily in the mechanism, but just in how massage for musculoskeletal care works and the outcomes that we've seen. But no, I'm not aware of a ton of lower leg research for massage therapy.
All right. I was just curious because
Yeah,
I was listening to your story and I was like, I'm not sure if I'd be that beneficial. Yeah, I feel a little bit underqualified in my understanding of lower leg treatment. So,
for sure.
but it sounds like the person you were working with at the time took good care of you and was able to help a lot.
Absolutely. And I think that it was also a pre-indicator for me around um, massage therapists in integrative practice. And so I could see later reflecting back the benefit that that massage therapist had of working with those other practitioners and learning their language and being able to be a part of that circle of care. And so I wonder if this practitioner may have learned quite a bit from these other individuals and then was able to translate it into their scope of practice and their sort of treatment mechanism. So I don't know, but as I look back on it now with some of the context that I have, I wonder those kinds of things.
Mm, yeah, I think that's a very wise awareness to have right there, Amanda. Talk to me then about the transition from patient or client to student of massage therapy. How long between those two would you say that came about?
So I probably finished dancing in 98. And like I said, by 2000, I was in a program. And so over that time, I started to learn more. I talked to some people that I knew who had taken massage therapy programs from my hometown, but who had taken it. I was in Toronto at the time, and so had gone to school in Toronto and were living and working there. So it was great to have a hometown connection and insight into their experience of the profession, and started looking around to see what schools were available. And so in Ontario, you have a choice between publicly assisted colleges that offer massage therapy or private colleges. And so I was weighing the pros and cons of the programs that were available at the time and did some of the like go and visit this school and see what was on offer in like open houses and those kinds of things with some friends of mine. And so just really trying to get a sense of what was I going into, what was the school going to be like, and what was the profession going to be like. And interestingly, you asked like at that time when I was a patient, sort of what preconceptions or notions did I have about massage therapy? Not very many, but over this period of time, as I was looking into it, the things that were actually drawing me, in addition to what I described before around sort of anatomy and physiology and applied anatomy, were things that surprised me now as I look back. I was super into aromatherapy. I wanted to understand how that was going to be a part of my practice. And so it was interesting to again look back on my development and where I find myself now when I look on those early understandings of what would be included in massage therapy.
Do you still find yourself at this point an interest in things like aromatherapy and other things that maybe weren't quite as on track with that anatomy physiology track?
I would say that I've moved. I'm still interested in those things, but I've certainly moved more into probably medical rehab, more of that kind of evidence-informed paradigm. Not to say that I don't find those things, the other areas still really interesting and intriguing, but um, on my research and evidence-informed journey, I've kind of moved away from those things. So it's interesting to look back and to remember like having my books about aroma. I felt like a bit of a witch. I was like, what am I going to do with this aromatherapy today? So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like that's our other half of this, very science front forward, and then also, you know, every time we're with someone, we're an artist. We're doing all of these things. We're taking in feedback that we get from them, of course, but we're also devising this plan and really, it's the science and the art to it. So I love
I
that.
agree.
So which school did you actually eventually end up going with? Is it pretty common for potential students of massage therapy to search around and spend some time discerning which school they want to attend?
It's probably six of one, half a dozen of the other. I think some people maybe school or have school in their area, so are inclined to choose that one, and then others will certainly look across. And so I ended up going to Centennial College, which is a publicly supported college in Ontario, and is actually the first college that started offering massage therapy in that public space. So that college is in Toronto, Ontario, and yeah, I went and I did the orientation and the open house, and really was inspired by the professors that I got to meet, and so decided to go there.
Interesting. Well, then tell me, from your introduction to massage therapy as a patient to being a student of massage therapy, how did those expectations match up? It sounds like you spent quite a bit of time thinking about which school to go to. Were there ways in which the program exceeded or met your expectations, or in other ways that they didn't quite hit the mark that you were looking for?
Yeah, as I think back on it, there it met what I was expecting. Coming from that ballet background, I always wanted to be the demo. I always wanted to be the person who was showing whatever. And so I really tried to engage. I am very theoretical in terms of how I learn, but I also benefit from applying what I'm learning. So that was always a great part of what my professors were doing. So I think, as you mentioned before, the team of professors was an eclectic mix of artists and scientists, which was phenomenal for me because I sort of thought of myself at the beginning as an artist, probably because of coming from ballet and all of that. And then over the 3 years that I was there, transitioned more into the scientist, recognizing that I don't think we ever lose either hat. So we had people who were more trained in holistic and energy forms of body work, and then others who were really focused and advocating at that time to bring evidence into practice for massage therapy. But what I really loved about all of them was that there was that application of knowledge. So we'd be in the classroom, we'd have our theory, but there would be some really exciting projects and lab-based practices that we would be engaging in. And I really loved that part of the program.
Gotcha. Since we're kind of dancing around this anyway, I want to take a second and ask you about, did you find any sort of transferable skills from your experience as a dancer or performer into your education as a massage therapist?
I think there are some transferable skills. Certainly the physicality of massage therapy, and the need to have some kind of a rhythm to, even just connect with your patients or your clients and the people that you're working with. Certainly there's ethic that comes with dance that was incredibly useful both as a student and then eventually in my practice. And then a very basic awareness of the body and some anatomy and physiology that we had taken in different phases of my dance career. I think those would be the things that come to mind. Work ethic,
Gotcha.
Just the work ethic of although you're with a group, at least in ballet, although you're part of a corps or you're part of a group, you're very much an individual in dance and responsible for yourself and responsible for your training and your timing and your preparation and all of those things. And so that was incredibly helpful as a student. I had friends who we all studied together and we all supported each other, but at the end of the day, you need to know your stuff. You need to be able to demonstrate those techniques. You need to know what assessments to do. And so I think that was incredibly helpful.
Quite a bit of that makes a lot of sense. And I also like in your last answer, you said it's important to have some sort of rhythm. Sometimes we call it flow. I I call it flow. I feel like that's one of the hardest things to teach, and then also one of the hardest things to grasp. I'm just wondering, could you riff maybe a little bit more about that?
That it was sometimes incredibly challenging for people to figure the connection between their arms and their torso or their hips and their legs. And so pieces like that came more naturally to me. And I kind of find it's equal to what we see sometimes when we see football players taking ballet, right? There is a physicality and a rhythm and a musicality that happens that just helps in so many different areas of life. And so the other piece that comes to mind for me around sort of the dance of massage therapy is connecting those techniques together. And so I found transitions between techniques to be more natural for me, where some of my colleagues struggled a little bit with it. But the things that I struggled at were things like deportment, because the staccato-ness of it didn't fit into my flow. And so it was harder for me to figure that out. Same with some of the coarser vibrations that didn't necessarily fit into the dance that I was doing. But I also wasn't very good at jumping or quick things in ballet either. So maybe it's a holdover from that.
I'm digging what you're saying. This is a really interesting aspect. I love how you're using like these musical and dance terminology, but in a relatable way to the work we do as massage therapists. So I'm eating all of this up right now. So talk to me. It sounds like Centennial. You said it was a 3-year program?
It is. It's what's called an advanced diploma in Ontario. So it is 6 semesters.
Whenever that you compare that, stack that up to here in the United States, you're looking at 9 months to a year, maybe a year and a half, 18 months, compared to 2 to 3 years in the Canadian systems. How do they fill the time, Amanda? What else are y'all getting that we're not?
For sure. So, how do we fill the time? So, in the first year, we're really focused on anatomy and physiology, and like all the anatomies and all the physiologies. So, we would have an A&P class that would just focus on kind of body systems. And then we would have a separate class with a lab on clinical anatomy and palpation and all of the little bits and pieces that you need to know as a massage therapist. We, of course, had sort of our techniques and treatments classes, and you would have one of those every semester over the 6 semesters. And so they would start with incredibly basic things like washing your hands, setting up your treatment space, understanding the regulations in our jurisdiction, and then move into these are your basic techniques. This is how you put together a treatment plan. And then as you got into the advanced years, it would talk about things like now you have this person and they're coming in, they have these conditions and these contraindications. How do you need to modify? What are your outcomes that you're trying to achieve? We had classes that taught us about all of the different conditions, so pathophysiology. But then we also had courses where we talked about what that meant. So how do you assess? What do you need to modify? What do you need to be looking out for? And so all of those pieces. In my program, they had started very recently incorporating research literacy. So how do you find, understand, analyze, and apply research for practice? So that was in our final year. What else did we have? We had communications courses. So the ethics and communications of massage therapy. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Oh, we had remedial exercise. So how do you use stretching, strengthening, mobility, proprioceptive exercises? So all of that. We had hydrotherapy at the time. That's not as big of a focus now. Yeah. Again, I'm probably forgetting something, but if I were to suggest a difference, because obviously I didn't go to school in the US, but I do spend a lot of time with educators and practitioners in the US, I think we tend to do more prior to entry to practice. And in the US, there is a much more robust, not that there isn't here, but a more robust continuing education where people just in time or as they see a need add to their toolkit in order to support what they're focused on.
Gotcha. What an interesting insight that I don't have. I appreciate that. A couple of things are coming up for me. First of all, I remember the question that I wanted to ask you as a follow-up to rhythm and flow. Were there certain classes, and it sounds like maybe remedial exercise could have fit this. For me, we had Tai Chi, and I feel like
Mm.
looking back in hindsight, Tai Chi really helped me develop some sort of flow and rhythm in my work. And I'm wondering if there were specific courses or electives um, in your programs that might have helped people get there that were struggling with it.
There weren't, that I recall, specific courses on that. However, there would be components around self-care and ergonomics. So, and sort of the ergonomics of how you were practicing. But no, our colleagues in traditional Chinese medicine got to do Tai Chi and Qigong, but it was not something that that has been in our well, at least the programs that I've been a part of. It is one of those opportunities to anything that gets you back into your body and helps you get grounded and understand where your arms are when your legs are also moving. I think that anything like that is incredibly helpful.
Absolutely. Dr. Baskwill, you also mentioned towards the end, and it sounds like maybe this was kind of a new aspect to the education piece, research literacy. That kind of give you the bug. Did you know at the time that you would end up where you are right now? Did that kind of spark an interest that was maybe dormant?
I had no idea that I would end up where I am now, but yes, absolutely. So it was called Trends and Issues in Massage Therapy. And the professor, Trish Dryden, as I mentioned, was adjusting the curriculum to really make it more research, research literacy and evidence-informed practice. And that's where my first publication came from. So we had a group assignment to look, we could choose any article we wanted to, and we had to do an analysis of it and a presentation. And so my colleagues, my friends and I chose to look at an article on massage therapy for HIV. And we took it to our placement at St. Mike's Hospital, and we talked to the epidemiologist there, and they helped us to understand some of the numbers that were in there and how it might be statistically significant, but they wouldn't consider it to be clinically relevant. And so we wrote this whole analysis on this article, and it ended up getting published in the Ontario Massage Therapists Association's publication called The Body Politic. And so we were over the moon. The four of us were incredibly excited. And so then we did a follow-up where we looked at quality of life for individuals with HIV and found not more positive, because there were positive findings in this immune measures study, but they weren't necessarily clinically significant. So we saw some more clinically significant findings in the quality of life one. So it was incredibly exciting, and that sort of capped off our program. And then over that summer, Trish was moving into more of a research focus role at Centennial and was looking for a research assistant. And so I put my hand up right away and said, pick me, pick me. And so that's where my research career began. Absolutely.
Can you speak to what it is about research that really just grabbed your attention like that and enough to make you volunteer to be a research assistant at the time? Like, it sounds like that's like at the start of your career, right?
Yes, absolutely it was. It felt like wizardry. It felt really interesting and exciting to know something at the end that we didn't know at the beginning, even if it was just a slightly different interpretation or if it was a new way of seeing something. My friends and colleagues will tell you that I might be a bit type A. So I do like things organized. I do like things that if they don't follow a linear sequence, they at least follow some kind of a logical sequence. Again, I don't think you can have only science and not art. So lots of space for creativity and all of that. But those components of research also speak to me. And then the other piece is the storytelling part of it. So I love mixed methods. I'm a pragmatist. I like to find the processes and the study designs and all of that that fit the thing that we're talking about or fit the question that we're trying to answer. And I think so many of our questions in massage therapy are qualitative, at least at this point. And so there's a lot of storytelling and a lot of hearing other people's voices and hearing their stories and trying to find those commonalities and similarities and differences to be able to figure out what happens next. And so I love that piece of research as well.
All right. Interesting. So I usually ask this question. Quite a few of the guests are from the United States. And like I said, much shorter timeline to call from. But are there any specific quirks memories or other surprises from your entry-level education that really stick out to you?
Different joints, and we got to saddle joint, and she climbed up on the table like she was riding a horse. So, I mean, that was quirky and surprising, but not, I think, what you're asking about. And then other surprises were just really good surprises. We had, I think, 3 different sessions where we got to go to different clinical practices out in the community. And then we would kind of switch halfway through each semester. So we ended up getting to go to 6 different places. And I was constantly surprised at the opportunities that we had there. So we got to work with women who were pregnant. We got to work with infants and children. We got to work with, I got to go to that HIV rotation at St. Mike's Hospital. We worked in palliative care. So we had all of these really incredible opportunities to see the power of massage therapy out in the world, interacting with each of these different people. And it wasn't always an amazing experience. Sometimes it was incredibly challenging, but the overall experience and ability to go out into the community and see what this profession can do and what it would look like for us in the future was really powerful.
That makes sense. We've kind of mentioned Trish. I'm wondering, at the time that you finished your program, were there any really big names in massage therapy at the time, whether that's CE providers, other school owners, maybe regulators, any national or local figures that you looked up to, tried to emulate, or maybe even cross paths with?
I had incredible experiences in Canada. As I mentioned, in Ontario, we have some private schools. And so Sutherland Chan Clinic is one of the big and long standing. And so Trish used to be a part of that and went there. And so Grace Chan and Deborah Curtis were around at the time. And so I had opportunities to engage with them. I taught at Sutherland Chan for a very short period of time. Pam Fitch, of course. So in Toronto, we have, of course, our network across the province with other programs that offer massage therapy. And so in Ottawa, we have a college called Algonquin. And they had, at the time, they do now still, but at the time they had a very powerful and influential group of educators. Pam Fitch was one of them. Marvin Mooring and Ian Dolmage were there as well. And so they were, inspiring, especially I was entering the practice, I was entering research, I was also entering education. And so they were very inspiring for me around how to approach education. And then I was working with Trish as a research assistant right after I graduated. And so I got to work with people across Canada, but then also started to meet people in the United States. And I remember there was a conference and Janet Kahn was coming. And Trish was like, I need you to go pick up Janet Kahn. And I was like, I'm going to pick up Janet Kahn in my Subaru Legacy with rust on it. I don't know how this is going to go. So Janet was incredibly lovely. But it was, it was amazing to be a part of those conversations. That's when we were really starting to, Trish and Janet were really starting to help massage therapists understand what case studies could do for us and what that whole area of research looked like. And I got to meet people like Glenn Heimel, Christopher Moyer, Diana Thompson, John Belletto, Dale Healy, Whitney Lowe, Ruth Warner. Trying to think of who else would have been on that group. Albert Maraska, Cynthia Price, lots of people who were doing amazing work, especially around research. At the time, they were really starting to try to get a journal launched. They wanted it to be a collaboration between Canada and the United States. That ended up being the International Journal of Therapeutic Massage and Bodywork. So yes, lots of amazing opportunities to connect and to be a part of the massage therapy sort of community in both Canada and the United States.
As you're talking, or I'm remembering, I think it was maybe 2001, there was like this international conference. Is that what you're talking about?
After 2001, it would have been 2003, 2004. It would have been in Toronto because that's where my car would have been. I feel like it was an in-cam conference, but there was also in 2004, the very first, and it had a different name at the time, but the International Massage Therapy Research Conference in Albuquerque. So I got to go to that. I went for 24 hours and I was responsible for all of the case study materials for the workshop that Janet and Trish were giving. So I got to carry those important documents to the conference.
All right. Was that maybe your first time in the States, Albuquerque?
For massage therapy, yes, but part of my dance career, I actually lived in Connecticut for 2 years.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then also, since we're kind of talking about all of this anyway, since we're kind of talking about provinces and stuff like that, is there much collaboration between the regulated provinces? Is there much overlap?
There is. So there are some formal collaborations. The regulators have a group called FOAM-TRAC, the Federation of Massage Therapy Regulation in Canada, something like that. And so that's where the colleges of massage therapy from across the regulated provinces come together in a coordinated way. And then similarly, there is the Canadian Massage Therapy Alliance, and that is a collection of associations from across the country that come to work together.
Gotcha.
And right now there's a project to review and update the competency document. And that is what's right now it's called the interjurisdictional competency profile, and that applies to all regulated provinces. So there's a concerted effort across the country to update that document right now.
And then what about the unregulated provinces? Can you speak to that? Because I feel like almost all of at least the Canadian guests we've had come from this regulated, one of the regulated provinces. So I'm wondering if you can just kind of speak to that, maybe prognosticate about the future with some of those provinces and territories.
Does invite any jurisdiction to participate. Associations from either regulated or unregulated provinces. And so that is a really great opportunity for collaboration. And as we see in lots of jurisdictions without formal regulation, the association really becomes that pseudo regulator. They really endeavor to set a scope of practice to ensure that people are adhering to some kind of ethical standard, and often standards within the profession, like the care standards. So I think there's a lot of learning and a lot of support that's provided at that table. And certainly, although Canada is large, there's a lot of collaboration and goodwill. Like anything, although the country's big, the community's small. So there's always people who are willing to help. And I think that some things, I'm thinking about Saskatchewan as for example. Saskatchewan has done a lot of great work around research literacy, and evidence-informed practice, and they're not regulated. So I think there is still the ability for the association to really lead. I think they would prefer to be regulated. I think there's a lot that comes with that. And I know that associations across unregulated provinces have been working for years, for decades to become regulated. And so, can I predict who might become the next regulated province? I certainly cannot, because I thought it would have been Manitoba a long time ago, but it's not. So I won't even wager anything on this horse race, but really hopeful and really supportive. And so certainly if anyone ever calls, I'm here to support in any way that I can. And I know that all of the associations feel that way as well.
I was going to ask, in these provinces that are unregulated currently, you said like the associations kind of feel that pseudo regulation hole. Do you feel that the associations have as much teeth as a regulator does, as a college?
I think certainly not necessarily from the public perception. I think that because we have regulatory frameworks that the public is used to, seeing something outside of that regulatory framework is a bit more challenging for them. It looks different to them. But I do think that they can within the profession. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But regulation is also not perfect. So we've got space in both areas to continuously improve. But I have seen, because of the way that practitioners access things like insurance, they still have the ability to say, if you're not a member, you don't have access to these like really great insurance rates. And while that's not a reason that someone's going to act ethically, it does encourage people to maintain their standards and follow up in the ways that they're supposed to with their association. So it's not exactly the same, but I do think associations have found mechanisms to support engagement in unregulated provinces. But would they prefer to be regulated? I think so. I don't think that's ever meant to be the role of the association. And so I don't know how well they feel they're resourced and those kinds of things to uphold that aspect.
Very interesting. This just came to me. Do you know in Canadian history, which came first, associations or regulatory colleges?
Associations. Yeah, absolutely. So in that way, massage therapy in Canada is a traditional professionalization journey where they've had an organized group of people who are all striving for the same thing. And then from that, regulation has come.
All right. Interesting. Thank you for that. Is there much in terms of Indigenous Canadian culture that seeps into the massage therapy profession or techniques?
Not that I'm aware of. That's not to say that there isn't work being done out there. I know that in the public colleges in particular, all public colleges are looking at their truth and reconciliation journey and looking for ways to have better Indigenous engagement. And so there are cultural competencies that are embedded more and more into programming. That tends to take on more of a cultural awareness, engagement. So, what do we need to understand about each other in order to have reciprocal and respectful relationships? But I'm not aware of education at this time, at least in Ontario, that specifically speaks to any kind of Indigenous massage approaches or anything like that.
All right.
Our education tends to focus on the principles and different types of manipulation. We'll name them because it's helpful just to be able to talk to other people, but it's not really focused on trademarked practices. So no, nothing that I can think of that is uniquely Canadian.
So let's jump back then to just out of massage therapy school. Did you start as a practitioner first before the opportunity to become a research assistant, or were those kind of happening in tandem with each other?
They were happening in tandem because of the regulatory process. So once you graduate, you have to wait for the next round of entry to practice exams, and there's a written portion and a practical portion. So I was writing my exams and waiting for my registration to come while I was starting to work with Trish as a research assistant.
Gotcha. Have you seen much evolution in regulatory process in that aspect? Have they improved or gotten more timely with those exams?
So for us, in our regulation, there's only a requirement that they be offered once or twice a year. They're offered than that, and so yes, there is a responsiveness. There's also been a shift to computerized testing for one component of it, which I think has helped. And for a while, and I don't know that this is true, but for a while, the practical portion was actually taking place at the regulators' offices. And so I think that also helped, having a space that allowed them to offer, it was a 7-station OSCE at the time that was happening, meant that they had control over when that space was used and probably a bit less overhead. I don't know that that's how it continues today, but certainly those computerization and having that space that they had control over helped with being able to be more flexible.
Can you break it down for me just a little bit more in case there are people who this is their first time hearing about the exam process in Canada, stations and OSCEs?
Yes. So the objectively structured clinical examination, or the OSCE, has had a variety of different stations that graduates have had to engage with. So when I went through this process, it was at a hotel in downtown Toronto, and there were 4 stations that you had to do. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what they are, but I do have the candidate handbook somewhere in a box at my house. So because you have to keep that forever. But now, or at least in recent times when I was involved, which would have been, as 3 years ago, I haven't looked at it since then, there were 7 stations. And so it would be things like an interview station. So here's your mock patient, engage in an interview with them. There would be an assessment station. There were 2 assessment stations. One was prescribed, so perform these assessments. And then the other one was, here's your patient. What would you do to assess them for this presentation? There was a consent station, so consent for treatment. There were then 2 treatment stations. The first one, just like assessment, was perform these techniques. And then there was for this patient in this presentation, what treatment would you provide? And then the last one was remedial exercise and hydrotherapy. So those were the 7 stations that may still continue today, but certainly were, as of 3 years ago, what student graduates needed to demonstrate in order to enter the profession.
Correct me if I've got this wrong in my mind, because when we say stations and we talk about this with our Canadian guests, the first thing that comes to my mind is like Stations of the Cross. So like there's different, you follow along the path, but it sounds like it's kind of, I don't know, I'm imagining like these booths where you're set up to be observed by someone. And is that pretty much it? And
so when we practice at the college, we're in our room, we pull the curtains and you have a table and a space, you've got people watching you. At the College of Massage Therapists, there's a room, it's set up like a treatment space. You head in, you have your patient, and then you have at least 2 observers, and they click the buttons to indicate that you've done something, and yeah, that's how you make it through those stations. So yes, it's really just a treatment space that's set up for that particular skill.
very interesting. And I'm wondering, has the practical portion of the examination like that always been a part of the exam process in Canada?
Not always, but for at least 20 years.
All right, cool. All right, because it used to be in the States, and I'm not sure there are many, if at all, any places that do any sort of practical exam for licensure here in the United States.
Yeah, and there's definitely a trend in healthcare generally to move from that practical portion to trust the educators that has been completed and have them engage in something like an ethics and legislative review, because that is always part of the regulator's purview, is to make sure people are prepared for ethical and legal practice, but leaving the skills and the techniques and those things to someone else. But right now, massage therapy in Ontario still approaches it with both aspects.
Thank you again for going down that rabbit hole with me. Talk to me about the roles that you've played in this profession.
Same time, becoming a practitioner, becoming registered. I started out of massage therapy in a chiropractic clinic, and I was doing a locum at the ballet school in Toronto, and so supporting the students there, which was really important to me because that is part of what motivated me to come in. So it was great to have a little time with them. I started doing the research with Trish, and so we had a couple of different projects that were on the go and lots of really interesting things that we got to engage in. And then as Trish started moving into more of an administrative role and doing more with research, I started moving behind her in education. And so I got to do, well, even before that, I started teaching at the community college in anatomy, physiology, and patho, not in massage therapy, but for some of their other health and wellness programs. And so then when the opportunity came to support some of the courses that Trish had been teaching, like business and entrepreneurship and research, or that trends and issues course, I was able to help out just behind where she was. And so that was incredible. My parents are educators, and so I've always had education in my life, and I've been a student forever. So it was great to be able to get back into the classroom and to be able to contribute in that way. And there were some times where research and the classroom would kind of come together. So there was a time when we worked on a project with the College of Massage Therapists of Ontario and the Government of Ontario to create an internationally educated massage therapy bridging program. So help to assess people's skills and knowledge from other countries around the world, and then help them figure out how best to transition to massage therapy in Ontario. And so that was a little bit of the research, but then it was a little bit of education. So really a great coming together of those worlds. Somewhere in there, I had shifted from the chiropractic practice and the ballet school into a spa for a while. And then I moved into a naturopathic clinic. And at that time, I was asked whether I would consider being a part of At that time, it was called the Ontario Massage Therapists Association. It's now the Registered Massage Therapists Association of Ontario. And so I looked at what it would mean to be a member of the board of directors, and I applied and I was appointed to that. So I started on my advocacy journey and learning more about what associations do and how they support professionals. At that, of course, in Ontario, we're regulated. So what that relationship is between the regulator and the association. Not long after I got there, 2 or 3 years, I moved into the role of chair, and so had the opportunity to sit on some of those committees like Canadian Massage Therapy Alliance. And I was still doing research and still working, teaching. And as I was working with Trish, somewhere in the middle of this is not perfectly chronological, she suggested that if I wanted to continue in either research or in education, that I would likely need to complete my degree. And so was incredibly supportive of me going back to school. I first chose a fully online program, and I was plugging away at my courses, and then I did a plan for what the whole degree would look like, and it looked like it was going to take me 20 years, and I was like, that is way too long for any degree. So changed directions and moved into a Bachelor of Education, specifying or specializing in adult education. So I was doing that at the same time these things were going on. And of course, that was informing the classroom and the way that I was approaching education. It was informing some of my research. So it was exciting. And when I graduated from my undergrad, as I was driving home, I was looking for what would my master's be. And so I chose a master's in health research methodology because I wanted to be able to support massage therapists to tell their stories. So they might not want to or not have the capacity to do research, but I could help them figure out how to do that. Somewhere in that, I shifted from Centennial to Humber. Humber College is in the West End of Toronto, and they were launching a new massage therapy program. And so I got to take everything that I had learned at Centennial. I taught at Sutherland Chan for a minute or two, and all of the work I was doing on advocacy to come together and bring together a team of folks to launch this new program, which was incredibly exciting. And I got to be a part of that for a number of years. I want to say 13 years, but that feels like a really long time. 2009 to 2017. So lots of students, lots of graduates, lots of curriculum development, lots of ideas that never worked, lots of ideas that did work, lots of new professors. Yeah, it was really great, a really great program, still is a really great program, really great team there. And then I had also transitioned in my practice at that point. So I had moved from the naturopathic clinic to another chiropractic clinic that really focused on pregnant individuals and their children. And then I had settled into a home-based practice. And in 2017, I shifted a little bit away from massage therapy education and moved into an administrative position. Eventually, I would still work with the massage therapy program, but I wasn't as close to it anymore. But I was doing my master's, I was writing, I was still doing research in massage therapy, and I was getting engaged with the International Journal for Therapeutic Massage and Bodywork. Eventually, I would become a practice editor there, and then practice in education, and then eventually, more recently, the executive editor and editor-in-chief. And golly, I hope those are all of the things. I eventually did my PhD and did some more research in massage therapy. Whew. 20 years.
What a marathon. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Society of Massage Archives wishes to congratulate Dr. Patricia Benjamin on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of her book, The Emergence of the Massage Therapy Profession in North America, A History in Archetypes. To honor this milestone, SOMA is launching the Adopt a Box campaign, a last chance to rescue and distribute the physical copies of this essential text before they disappear. You can help get a box of books into massage schools, libraries, practitioners, and educators' hands. And starting soon, join us for the SOMA Book Club, a monthly conversation where we'll read The Emergence and reflect on the stories, struggles, and triumphs that shaped our profession. Help us preserve massage history and carry it forward.
Let's pick that apart just a little bit, if you don't mind.
Of course.
First of all, let's just get this all out of the way. Talk to me about the different clinical settings that you've worked as a practitioner. It sounds like chiro to a spa setting to a naturo, back to a chiro for with a specific niche of prenatal clients, and then to a home-based practice. Does that sound right?
That is exactly right. With a little couple of things here and there. Like I mentioned, I did a little bit of work with the ballet school when they needed some people to fill in. There was another spa that I worked with periodically on some of their lymphedema, like patients who would come in who really probably shouldn't be having just general spa treatments, but were able to have massage therapy, just needed someone who would take the time to figure out all the contraindications and things like that. But yeah, those are the places.
Could I ask you, which one did you enjoy the most? Could you rank them if I asked you to, or like speak about the differences, what you learned maybe from each one, something like that?
I think the first chiropractic clinic that I worked at was probably the most challenging, partially because I was still really fresh in the profession. And so I didn't ask for the right things in my contract. And so there were things I wanted to do that I wasn't able to. I'm thinking about like advertising and posting things, and nope, that's not, the clinic does that, you don't do that. So there were some things like that I learned around reviewing the contract and not settling until you have what you need and what makes most sense to you. The spa that I worked at had really great people, and it was the place where I learned how important trained massage therapists are in spa areas. Like I said, there were more in the second one than the first, but there were people that came to the spa who needed a great deal of assessment to make sure that what they were engaging in was safe for them. And I remember two very specific individuals. The first one was a woman who was experiencing a high-risk pregnancy, and her family thought she just needed to relax. And so they'd gotten her a gift card to come to the spa and have a Vichy spa, like a full body Vichy, and like all of these different things. And I'm looking at her health history and I'm saying to the clinic owner, no, we're not doing these things. Like we'll have a conversation, we'll find something else for her, but that's not what's going to happen today. And then the second example was an individual who was diabetic. They're coming in for a pedicure. How many times have we heard this story? And they've had injury to their foot that no one has looked at. Their physician hasn't looked at it. Their nurse hasn't looked at it. And they should not be getting a pedicure today. And so I was not always the most popular person. And I'm certainly not here to diagnose anyone's medical condition, but there are times when we look at things and we have conversations with our patients and we say, this is not safe for us today. Let's get some additional medical intervention here, and then let's come back and try this again. So the spa was really great learning for me, because there were these, like, people often think, oh, you're not going to learn anything in the spa, you're just going to give relaxation massage. Oh, you would be lucky if you just gave relaxation massage. I think the spa is where everyone comes who has all of the things. They're just not thinking about them in the front of their mind always. And so it's really important that we're paying attention and asking these questions in that environment. And then the chiropractor with the pregnancy and child focus was just lovely. It's lovely to work in a place where people immediately feel some kind of relief by lying down on your table. And then, like, you're not even involved yet. They're just like, oh my goodness, I get to lie down. And so there was a lot of really amazing people, a lot of really interesting cases, a lot of stuff that I didn't know about that I was learning about. And so really great space. It was also a multidisciplinary clinic. So one of the, not the only times, because obviously chiropractic and naturopathic clinics are multidisciplinary, but it was multidisciplinary in a way that, I guess that now I should probably call it interdisciplinary. It was very much about having huddles and having conversations about who was doing what. And it was my first real brush with, no, we're a team, we're going to have this conversation together and figure out who's best positioned to help this person, as opposed to all just being co-located. And then home practice was convenient and good for the most part, but you always needed just an extra layer of caution around new patients coming and how you were going to separate all of that. I had a separate entrance, and so that was helpful. But yeah, brought all of those things you don't always think about when you're in a group practice.
For sure. All right.
So no, I can't rank them, but they certainly all had their pros and cons to them.
Yeah. Well, good. Some people just go through the motions of, whatever life throws at them and wherever they're working. So it sounds like you've at least been engaged and have learned from them. And I think that's really the important of every life experience, is to find something to learn from what we're in. You mentioned that as Trish kind of got closer and closer, further into working with research, you kind of followed in her footsteps and kind of picked up where her absence in the education aspect was, if that sounds right. Was there anything else that kind of prompted that for you? I mean, you mentioned that you come from a family of educators. Tell me again, I'm going to ask you about expectations from going as a receiver of massage therapy to being a student of massage therapy, and then to go into actually being an educator of massage.
Being engaged in education my whole life. Both my parents are educators. Now that we're all grown, my brother is an educator, my sister-in-law's an educator. Like, there are just educators all around. There's something in the water in my hometown. And even as a younger child, I would be a peer tutor. I would help out. My mom taught primary grade 1 a lot, so I would help out in her class and do those kinds of things. When I was in college, I was a peer tutor. So always engaged in trying to find ways to make education accessible. I was in a study group I mentioned before. I had about 4 friends that we always studied together. We were always trying to come up with like a game or a different way of engaging in the material so that we could learn it. We had something called grab bags. So you would put whatever you were studying. So if you're studying the muscles, you'd put all of your muscles in a bag just on a little piece of paper. You'd grab it. You'd have to say where it started, where it ended, what it did, and what it was innervated by. So we would come up with all of these kinds of games. And so when I had the opportunity to move in to teaching, I started with, it was actually a spa practitioner program, and I was teaching them anatomy and physiology. And what I loved about it was trying to figure out what they wanted and needed to know. So if you're going to work in the spa, what is your scope of practice? And how much of this do you need to know? And sometimes they were not happy because they felt that they didn't need to know something, and I felt that they did. That's okay. We can disagree. But I always tried to find fun ways to do it, like different handouts and different games and projects that would help them apply what they were learning, and try to really find different ways of engaging. And so then when I started my degree, when I transitioned into the degree in adult education, I got to learn all the names for the things that I was doing. So these are not things that I made up. These are paradigms and pedagogy that exists. I was now just able to put names to them. And so really come at the classroom as an active educator, as students, engaging students actively. I dabbled with things that were a disaster, like problem-based learning. So in problem-based learning, you start with the problem and then you try to gather all of your information to come up with a solution. It sounds amazing. And for people who use it well and who have the structures and resources around it, it is amazing. But when you walk a cart into a research class that has textbooks on it about research and you say, "Hi, make a study," it doesn't always work well. It's not always successful. So live and learn. But yeah, so really tried to engage in some of these different active learning styles that really allow students to guide and choose what they need to learn, but with support to be able to provide them resources. So when I was teaching massage therapy at the beginning, I was teaching courses that the massage therapy students didn't necessarily see the value in. So when you're in your final year of your massage therapy program, and you're planning on getting a job working for someone else, you don't necessarily see the benefit in your entrepreneurship course because you don't want to start your own practice. You don't want to deal with your own anything. You just want to work for someone else. And so it was, for me, all about trying to make that information relevant when people were perhaps more focused on their techniques and treatments classes or refreshing their anatomy and physiology knowledge because they were about to take their entry to practice exams. So trying to bring all of that in, trying to connect it for people, again, is really exciting for me because I find it a bit of a challenge. You've got to, just as you think you're getting somewhere, a new individual enters the chat and you're like, nope, this isn't going to work for them. Let's adapt and try something new.
Can I ask you, what do you think is the most challenging aspect in massage therapy education, either as an educator or overall where that fits into the whole of a profession?
I think the most challenging thing in massage therapy education continues to be inconsistencies. So we've talked earlier about the inconsistencies between the number of hours for programs in the United States, programs in Canada, across the United States, within Canada. And the hours I'm not as concerned about because I can learn something in 100 hours and you can take 10 hours because of our different life circumstances. So I'm not really worried about the hours. But how wonderful would it be if we could have an agreed upon set of competencies for entry to practice? I think that would be is really interesting and inspiring. And so because of all of the differences in our education, because of all of the differences in our practice experience and how much we engage, because of the differences in how much continuing education people do and what they focus on in those continuing education courses that they choose, all of our educators have different ways that they talk about what we do, who we are, how what we do works or doesn't work. And I think that's challenging. That's challenging for a profession to find unity. That's challenging for the public to understand what they're going to get when they go and see a massage therapist. I think it's challenging for policy writers to incorporate massage therapy into healthcare because they don't know what to expect from massage therapy. And so for me, I think that's the biggest challenge.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. It's a very thorough and thoughtful answer, I think. All right, let's shift gears into the third aspect you kind of talked about, Amanda, your work with the association. Can you talk to me? What did you learn from that side of the profession?
I learned a ton about advocacy. And by that, I mean, I learned how to sit in different spaces and listen to what was being said about massage therapy or about massage therapists and try to find ways to frame what it is that we do, what we were trying to achieve, whether it be regulation in a new jurisdiction or increase in competencies or whatever those pieces were. So try to frame it in a way that that individual or that group would value. And I think for massage therapy, that conversation about what it is we do, how we do it, and what the mechanisms are for it to work or not work are challenging for us to have as a profession because we don't always have the language that other people need in order to sort of bridge our worlds. And language has been a big thing on my mind lately, just around how we describe our profession, because I think even as we try to describe it, rather than that being an exercise that unifies us, it actually becomes incredibly divisive because people feel like they're losing a part of their identity rather than seeing this as a constructive exercise to make us to formulate a professional identity that we can all sort of find some alignment with.
That's so unfortunate. And it kind of becomes like this cyclical, how do we unify whenever that we can't even come to an agreement on a definition? Yeah, and I don't know. Do you have any ideas in terms of a solution for that?
I think the solution is tolerance because I do think that we spend a lot of time othering each other within the profession. And I understand the concept of othering in developing a professional identity. So when you're in school, you're learning to be a massage therapist, even as a young child, and you're learning about the world, some things that we use to support that construct building is to say, I am this, I am not that. And so like it's something that happens during socialization. What I don't understand is why we do it within our own profession. That is challenging for me. And so I do think that having some level of ability to say, in massage therapy, we are diverse, and you do this and I do that. Because if we can stop fighting about it, then we can start having conversations about, okay, yes, in the past, this has been part of what we do. Do we want to continue to have that as part of what we call massage therapy, or will massage therapy become this, and then that will become peripheral to massage therapy, still valued, but just not underneath this umbrella. But until we can at least acknowledge the value that each other brings in all of the aspects of care, we can't start to have a productive conversation, because it just comes down to, you don't value me, you don't value me, we can't talk. And that is an incredibly challenging place to be in.
Can you think of any examples in the time that you've been in the profession where you've seen that happen, where there have been certain techniques or practices that we've kind of set aside to be adjunct, so to say?
Depends on the jurisdiction. So if I look at something, practices like Reiki or Shiatsu are not necessarily smushed under the larger umbrella of massage therapy. They would be distinct. So you would be a Reiki practitioner, you would be a massage therapist, you would be a Shiatsu therapist, but you wouldn't necessarily expect to receive Reiki from a massage therapist in Ontario. Now, I know that's not true everywhere, because I know on some national exams, those practices are part of what you're tested on. So that's just an example from Ontario, but it's that kind of process around, is aromatherapy part of massage therapy practice, or is aromatherapy a skill that you use as an adjunct that can be incorporated into massage, but that is not expected part of massage therapy treatment?
It sounds like mincing words, but it's actually, I think really important to decide where each thing like that fits in, right? Okay, let me ask you, how long were you involved with the association as a board member and then as the chair?
I think it was a total of 7 years. I think I was a board chair for 4 and a director for 3.
Okay. And is there any particular challenge or triumph from that time that you look back on that is really at the forefront of your mind?
It was exciting to introduce something like a profession at the crossroads. So there was a lot happening at a strategic level. There was a lot of effort around collaboration. So both collaboration between the association, the regulator, and the schools in Ontario, but then also the beginning of that collaboration across the country for associations. So with it brought all kinds of tense and productive and challenging conversations about how do we make this all work together. Similar to the challenges of the profession that we just talked about, if I'm coming in as an association and I have these goals and these objectives and these principles that are all around advocacy for the profession, those are not always going to be aligned with the goals and objectives of the regulator, which will not always be aligned with the goals and objectives of the educator. And so how do we agree that we are going to disagree, because it is our professional responsibility to do so, but to do it in a way that's productive and still allows us to collaborate on things where we do align and we can find productive means forward. So that's what was happening at the time. I certainly would not take credit for any of it, but I'm certainly incredibly grateful to have been a part of it and worked with a lot of really great humans during that process, where we were all just in the messy middle trying to figure it out and try to find something that I think has over time improved. But again, I certainly would not take credit for solving all of the collaborative issues of the regulators, the educators, and the association in Ontario at that time. But yeah, there was a lot happening around that during that time.
Was there any time in any of these tense, or was there ever any like aha moment for you in the role of working with the association where, I don't know, maybe there was like some big epiphany or realization or anything really stick out to you, a memory from that time?
Nothing's really coming to mind. Again, it feels like a lifetime ago.
Just because I ask, maybe if this is helpful, I feel like each one plays a different role. So like educator sees massage therapy as from one specific vantage point, regulators see massage therapy from one specific vantage point, and then associations yet from another. So I'm wondering if there's like ever a moment where you were in a conversation and you were like, "Oh, they've been seeing it this way. I've been coming at it from this approach." Anything like that really sticking out to you, Amanda?
Not really, and it may just be because I tend to wear so many hats all at the same time. So I think that explanation is really helpful in terms of framing it, because I would say that the association tends to approach things more like individual clinicians do. And so being an individual clinician, I was right there to advocate because the things that we saw that the profession needed or that we heard our members needed were things that I knew that I needed. And so, no, there's nothing that's coming to mind. I'm sure there were lots of aha moments. It would have been one of the first times that I would have taken on a formal leadership role. And so I certainly had a lot of lessons. The executive director at the time was Andrew Parr, and I learned a ton about him around leadership and engaging in a policy governance board, and so things like that have served me incredibly well throughout my profession. But nothing along the lines that you're talking about that's coming to mind. Again, I'm sure there were times. They're just buried in the archives of my mind.
I love that. Okay, maybe let me ask you this. Sometimes whenever that we're in situations, and maybe it's always like this, maybe this is just the natural stances being a human, the human experience. Is there a way to make everyone happy? Regulators, association, members, practitioners, educators. Is there a solution where everybody gets satisfied?
My flippant answer is when there's another enemy. So everyone is always friends when there's something else that you're fighting against. So if there are those situations where everyone is pulling around, I'm thinking of insurance, right? So there are lots of times when it's in the regulator's best interest that insurance properly be paying for and accounting for massage therapists. It's in the best interests of the profession and the clinicians. It's the best interests of educators. So when there is a topic or a cause that everyone is pulling for, then yes. And then my perhaps more real answer is no, but that should be okay. That not everyone is going to win at the same time all the time, but as long as we are working in the best interests of the people that we serve primarily and the profession, then we do all win. We just might not win on our cause on that day, but there will be a time when your cause is the number one cause and you get the win of that day.
Okay. Let's shift gears if you're okay with that. I want to talk about what you're doing now. Specifically, talk to me, if you can, about the history of research in massage therapy, how you've seen it evolve over the years.
The easiest place to start is probably just around the volume of research. So when I first started in 2003, pulling the literature for the impact of massage therapy or the efficacy of massage therapy for low back pain, working with Michelle Priday and working with Trish Dryden, there was a small body of literature that we were pulling from. And it was small enough that sort of in those, I would say 5 years, probably between 2003, so I guess 6 years, 2003 to 2009, I individually felt like I had a very good handle on the available literature out there. At the time, I felt like you want to, like your lower limb question today. Ask me the lower limb question. I can answer that. I can tell you about the carpal tunnel research. I could tell you about the HIV literature. I could tell you about oncology. Like I could tell you all of the areas that had been studied in massage therapy because it was so small. And I had the opportunity to engage in it in the work that I was doing. And so even when it was small, I had a lot of value that I placed on being able to understand it and analyze it so that I could apply it either in the other research that I was doing with Trish or in the education that I was starting to get involved in and how I could bring it to the classroom or in my own practice. And so as the years have progressed, there are things that I feel like we have just researched to death. There are some things that, unless there is a change in our practice or a shift in the condition, we can probably stop spending money to research it. The two areas that I would call out, if I may be so bold, would be massage therapy for back pain. I think we've cornered the market on that one. Yes, massage therapy has an impact on back pain, chronic lower back pain, chronic non-specific lower back pain, like lots of the back pains. So there's a ton of literature out there, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the back pain specialists out there will be very disappointed in this assessment and share with us all of the areas of massage therapy and low back pain that are still to be studied. But that feels like you can probably pause there. And then the other one is oncology. And again, big topic, lots of things, but we have studied a lot of different types of oncology, a lot of different types of outcomes, and found a lot of positive benefits, not always positive, but so let's start implementing those. Let's start getting those, or let's continue getting those out into practice, into guidelines, into policy, because there's tons there. And then we can turn our attention to other areas of emerging and understudied areas. Those I have less of a rant about, because I think there is still tons for us to look at. But what I've seen over the years is that we have more studies, in different areas. Some of the challenges that have persisted throughout are, what are our best study designs? Because we started in wanting to follow the traditional or typical medical research model. We want to use a randomized control trial, but of course we get into all of the challenges around, if it's not massage therapy, what is an appropriate placebo effect? Is there an appropriate placebo effect? We always get the criticism of the placebo effect of just the interaction with the practitioner. So how can we sort of answer that question and have it just be understood where we are with that? And then one of my areas that I think is really interesting that we should spend more time with, especially with all of the evolving technology, is around pressure application and consistency of pressure and whether or not that matters, again, kind of so that we can answer that question. I know research, the point of it is not to answer any question, but just to ask more questions. And I love that about it. But wouldn't it be nice if we could have a few of these things that were answered, at least for now. So, but yes, I think pressure and whether pressure matters and in what context pressure matters is a really interesting conversation that we are able to delve more into with technology these days.
Is there much literature out there right now on that question?
Not a ton. And unfortunately, like any profession, where there is work being done, it hasn't necessarily been published. So I know that there was someone at Algonquin College who was working on this, but I don't think they've ever published their findings. And so yes, there is some knowledge that's out there that hasn't been formally disseminated, so we don't get to benefit from it.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing your top two of what has been researched to death. I love that. And I can definitely see how those are two really hot topics. Let me ask you, is there maybe one that's kind of coming on the scene right now that's really hot, that you see more and more, like it's getting more and more literature being published about it right now?
Definitely massage therapy and mental health. And that's not just so that I can make a shameless plug of the September issue of the Christopher Moyer on massage therapy and mental health or anxiety and depression. And from then, we've just continued this conversation. And we've known a long time before that there are impacts across conditions on psychological aspects of people's health. But from that moment on, there has been more recognition. And I think as society becomes more supportive and understanding of mental health and the importance of mental health, there are going to be more studies because there's going to be more funding. And unfortunately, that's still a reality that research and research focus still follows funding dollars. And so I think that the larger area of mental health is one where massage therapy is getting more intentional about what we study, because the meta-analysis was really looking at anxiety and depression outcomes across a variety of conditions and people's presentations, whereas now we're specifically looking into massage therapy's impact on individual mental health conditions. I'm thinking about PTSD in veterans as one area that we're seeing more being studied. So yes, I think that that's one area. And then maybe my wish list item is I would love to see more educational research done on massage therapy, because I think as a hands-on profession, our education has to be application-based. And so I think for years and years and years, we have been doing interesting things to support students acquiring of manual skills, while also requiring theoretical skills and sort of the embodiment of different attitudes and ethics. And so I think we have a lot to share with other people, but because we've been doing it for so long, we don't think it's interesting or innovative. So I'd love to see us doing more, looking at our practices in education and sharing those with others.
Okay, interesting. Let me ask you first about this recent uptick, perhaps as a way to categorize it, in research into the psychological aspects or potential benefits of massage therapy. Is there anything in particular? My inclination is to point a finger at COVID. Are there other contributing factors that you think has led to this recent uptick?
I think COVID absolutely shone a light, especially on the danger of isolation and inability to access regular healthcare on people's mental health and diagnosed or undiagnosed mental health conditions. I think that there has also just been an incredible amount of work, whether it's through public health or whether it's through social and community services, to normalize mental health conditions, mental health crises, and mental health as and wellness as something that we need to pay attention to in the same way that we pay attention to our physical health. And I think we've seen nods to this over the years. We've seen things like psychological first aid, which is similar to physical first aid, but it focuses on, if you are a bystander and someone is having a mental health crisis, what can you do as an individual to keep this person safe and get them to help, in the same way that you would do for someone who is injured or having a heart attack in that way. And so, I think we see indicators of this. In Canada, we have something called the Bell Let's Talk Day, which focuses on depression. So I think the more that people are talking about anxiety, depression, ADHD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and syndrome, all of those things help us to normalize the language of it and remove the stigma. And so when the stigma starts to go away, then it feels safer for people to talk about it, to engage in research, to fund it, because it becomes more of a conversation socially and publicly. So I think all of that plays into this.
And then the item on your wish list. Let me ask you, Dr. Baskwill, are you involved much anymore in the actual research process, or are you strictly just focused, you're doing editorial work right now?
Currently, at this very moment, it's mostly editorial work. There are a couple of potential projects in play, but nothing in this immediate moment.
Okay. Well, back to your wish list item then. Talk to me about, like, if you could, is there, like, how would you design a study on that education piece?
Really comes down to what the question is. But as I think back on some of the educational research that I've done in the past, there is, of course, your typical survey. So if there's something that you want to understand about your students in terms of how they're experiencing it or how they're learning, then you can certainly survey them or test them. People tend to be drawn to, like, before and after testing. And while that shows changes, the purpose of education is to improve people's ability to learn. And so it's not always impressive that we say beforehand they didn't know anything about this, we told them about it, and so now they do know about it. And so I like more observational studies. So you can go and have someone go into the classroom and watch how students engage. So if the point of a new activity or technique that you're using is to engage students better, you can watch them in a traditional version of their classroom. You can watch them in the more engaging or supposedly more engaging version. You can have certain things that you're looking for. So it could be observational. And then I think qualitative. So having focus groups and having students be able to share their stories about what they're learning. And then the last one will be artifact based. So being able to take writings that students have done or materials that they've created early on in their program or in their semester, and then assess them as they move through, trying to capture or communicate what has been impactful for them or where learning has happened for them. Those are all different types of studies that start to get at not just does education help students learn? It does. That's why we do it. But what pieces of education is most important or impactful, or does this engaging activity engage students in the way that I was hoping that they would be engaged, or is it doing something else that I didn't anticipate?
I feel so inadequate. I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable. We didn't really have any research literacy. I mean, it was in our textbook, but it wasn't really touched upon. And then whenever that you get out, it's something that we talk about quite a bit. You should read research papers. You should engage in it. If nothing else, you should at least be donating to the MTF and subscribe to the IJTMB. So I'm just there's so many. I feel like I really want to spend time and really give research. I'm just, you know what? How about this? I'll just give you an open mic to talk about it. What do you?
Very dangerous. You might never get this microphone back. So I think that we are in a perfect storm of information. So the first place that I would send you as someone who wants to learn more about how to engage with research, but probably has incredible time limits because we are all busy, no matter who we are, there are always things that are pulling for our attention. So there are places on YouTube that have, like, if you search research literacy, or if you search research question or finding research, I actually on my website started a page. It's hidden and secret, so you have to reach out to me directly, but I'm happy to share it. And it's just research resources. And one of the YouTube videos I found is a woman who creates videos for graduate students and undergraduate students. And so she has a whole video on how to use Google Scholar, which is a free search on Google, to search better and find things that you're looking for. It's great. It's 3 minutes long, I think. And in it, she gives practical tips. She shows screenshots of what you should be seeing. And so it's one of those things where in 3 minutes, you can see what she did and you can try it out in 5 minutes and you can do your first search to find literature on massage therapy and your favorite topic. Things like that are very widely available. The other thing that I would offer is, I'm not sure, as I'm about to say this out loud, I'm like, maybe I don't want to recommend this. There's something called the CRAP test. So it's about currency and relevancy and authorship and authenticity. So it's CRAAP. And so if you search for that, that's one way that you can start to assess your sources. And so you can start to do your own inventory of, when I'm looking for new information about massage therapy, how credible, how reliable, how authentic, how much authority do these resources have? And should I be maybe starting to consume more reliable, more credible, more current resources? And so it's a small step that you can take to just shift the way that you consume information. And then the last piece that I would suggest, again, shameless plug, but I'm putting it out there, is, as you said, just set up the notification to learn when the next IJTMB is coming out. It comes out 4 times a year, and it has, we try to have about 8 articles. Pick one each month, and then you will have read 12 articles. And if you don't understand it, if you don't like it, if it did nothing for you, that's okay, because one of them will be of interest to you. One of them will drive you to look up, well, what does that mean? I don't understand what that is. Great, there's tons of resources to help you understand what this particular subject or design or whatever, what it means. And every time you read something and every time you ask another question about what does this mean to me, or that you talk about it with a friend, you become that much more research literate. And so it's certainly, you can take courses, you can sign up for free courses through things like Coursera or whatever, your LinkedIn Learning, like whatever your favorite place is. There's always full courses out there, but people don't always have time or motivation for that. So really just trying to start small and find a couple of things that you can do over time to make you more confident in what you're reading and what you're understanding.
Awesome. Because there is a disconnect in what research tells us and what gets propagated through, let's call it oral, what's marketable, what we can say. If there's one thing that's out there in the popular stuff that gets spread around in massage therapy education, continuing education in particular, I'm going to point a finger at, that you wish practitioners would stop saying, stop repeating, stop telling your clients, because the research has just completely obliterated it. Is there anything that first thing comes to mind for you right there?
Flushing the tissues. I don't know how we expect anyone to take us seriously if we're going to talk about flushing the tissues. That's my one. That's my one, my top one.
All right.
There's so much nuance to circulation that I know it's really challenging to be able to talk about it in a way that is accessible to anyone. I just think we do more damage by making it so simplistic as to be inaccurate. And I think that it's that kind of language that causes an informed patient or client to say, oh, I don't know that this person knows what they're talking about. That causes another healthcare practitioner to overhear that and go, what? Oh, those massage therapists. Causes someone who's in your practice but is a policymaker to go, oh, I don't think this is a real health practice. And I know that that's just one tiny example, and I'm really embellishing it into all of these potential sort of, what is that called? Butterfly effect outcomes. But I do think that that's sometimes how people form perspectives on massage therapy and massage therapists. And so, yes, flushing the tissues is the one that I would like us to really get informed about, find some new language, share with everyone, and rebrand massage therapy and circulatory work from there.
I'm going to make the assumption that IJTMB has some studies, some articles that people could look to for that.
I don't know that IJTMB does specifically, but there certainly are articles out there, and there's some, even in some trade journals, where people have taken the time to sort of say, this is a literature that's out here, and this is what we know about mechanisms of action. So there is some work around that.
Cool. I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to ask you, is there any work being done out there? Research, we look at it very scientifically, is what we usually and how we can apply it to our practice. Is there anything being done out there in terms of historical research in massage therapy that maybe I'm just not coming across?
But I think it is another wish list. I tell that story of massage therapy from a couple of different perspectives. The one that I tend to go to is professionalization trajectory. And I think there's been some work on that, probably not purely through a historical lens, but certainly through a chronology of massage therapy practice. But I think there's also a lot that could be looked at around language, around culture, around myths and truths and different aspects. So nothing that I'm aware of, but certainly an area for exploration.
Right. Interesting. Let me bring us into some closing thoughts because we're coming up on our time limit. When you look back on your career in massage therapy, and I don't know how you'll answer this because there's been so many aspects that you've sat through and experienced, but when you look back on your career, what are you most proud of?
Yeah, that's a great question. We as a profession could have grabbed our jacks and gone home a long time ago and just hidden away in our practices and carried on. But when I talk to massage therapists in Canada, in the United States, I was on a conference in Australia virtually a little bit ago. Massage therapists continue to be incredibly curious and interested in discussing these topics, whether it's regulation or in policy or education and accreditation or evidence and research literacy. And I think that all of this is incredibly important to continue to have that conversation about the perception of massage therapy and massage therapists. And I hope that some of my contributions as an author or an educator or a researcher have informed some of these discussions.
All right. If you could record one historical figure's account of massage therapy, someone who's no longer with us, who would you choose and perhaps why?
So the person that I would choose, the person who comes to mind immediately is a woman named Wendy Hunter, and I think her name has come from other Canadians, but she was one of the profession's most passionate advocates. She was part of the profession around the time that we were renegotiating sort of the legislation in Ontario. She was trained as a nurse and then also trained as a massage therapist. And so her ability to bring those two worlds together as an advocate was incredibly important. And then she was also an educator. So she was the program coordinator when I was at Centennial College. And she was always bringing these two worlds to us. And I think for me personally, it was inspiring to see, because she saw an integration for massage therapy into healthcare that wasn't happening at the time. And so that was really meaningful for me. And that sort of futuristic and evolution of massage therapy of the massage therapy profession that I was experiencing as a student and really just starting to learn, looking towards that potential integration as a healthcare professional in a team and all of that was really exciting. And so she made a lot of contributions during important times in the evolution of massage therapy in Ontario. And so I'd love to, now being at this part in my career, just learn more from her, because I think I was too novice to really appreciate all that she was trying to achieve.
Gotcha. That's a good answer. And I like more nitty gritty, really locally, I like answers that are a bit more like that. On the flip side of that, who would you like to hear from on this podcast next? Who should we talk to, put in your seat next time?
I think that Dr. Sarah Fogarty, so she and I do some work together on the journal and have done a couple of research projects together. I think having an Australian history component to this would be really phenomenal. Who else? I'm trying to both think through the list of people that you've had and the list of people you have yet to have. I certainly think the Grace Chans and Deborah Curtis of the world, who have been advocating for the profession and for education for a long time, would be phenomenal. And I don't know if they're always massage therapists, but I think like a Christopher Moyer and his perspective on massage therapy as a researcher, and I think he would self-identify as an outsider, would be really interesting too, because I think he got a crash course in massage therapy and certainly had a lot of interaction with us for a number of years. So it'd be interesting to see what he thinks about all of these different topics and what he's experienced of massage therapy.
Excellent. Those are some great names to look into, I think. Tell me, very last final notes, couple of questions. Before we go, obviously you're doing a lot of work with IJTMB, but is there anything else that you're up to these days? How could listeners learn more about your work with IJTMB, connect with you, or support what you're doing right now?
Absolutely, doing lots of work with the IJTMB. As I mentioned, in September, we our special focus on massage therapy and mental health. And really encourage people to go to ijtmb.org and explore everything that's there. We also have the archives to 2008. Oh my goodness. So dig in. There's lots of food for thought there. Personally, I'm in the process of planning 2026, so we'll see specifically what it brings, but I've recently launched a website, so you can come and see me at Amanda Baskwill, alloneword.com. And there are ways to connect with me there, so feel free to visit me on YouTube. There's a link, or Instagram, or you can reach out and ask for that follow-up secret resource page for research literacy. But yeah, I'm doing some presentations and some work on generative AI for massage therapists, specifically mostly massage therapy educators, how we're using it in education, both for our own administrivia, but also to engage students in understanding how best to ethically engage with Gen AI. And then research and literacy and capacity is always a passion of mine. So always happy to talk about that whenever someone passes that microphone. And finally, had a great opportunity recently to have a conversation with some massage therapists about the potential role for research as a common ground for interprofessional collaboration and looking more at how we can reduce hierarchies that exist in healthcare to engage more productively with other healthcare practitioners. So just some passion projects and some areas of interest. So yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Nothing major, just
Just a few things here and there.
huge paradigm shifts, no big deal.
Yep.
Last thing, Amanda, is there anything we haven't covered? I feel like some interviews I feel like I've knocked it out of the park. Other ones I've been like, oh my God, I can't believe I just wasted this person's 2 hours. This one I feel like I'm going to have to go back with. I feel like we could have really dug in on some of these topics, but is there anything we haven't covered yet that you'd like to add? Once again, the mic is all yours this time.
I think you've done a phenomenal job, and I could talk about it for days. Despite my heavy criticism of my profession at times, I remain eternally optimistic. I am one of those people who believes that feedback is incredibly important, and unfortunately, sometimes feedback and criticism look very and the same. But I've never shied away from trying to help find the solution. So I think that when we're willing to engage in criticism and reflect on what our profession is doing well and where we can grow, and then commit to being part of the solution, that we are able to conquer anything. Maybe not within 20 years, because sometimes it takes 20 years to turn a ship. But I have really appreciated and enjoyed the opportunities over the years to learn from the accomplished individuals that are leading and have touched our profession. And I just feel really grateful to be a part of this evolution. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing to capture the history of massage therapy, because I think it takes so long for some of these things to shift that we feel like nothing is happening. And because we don't have a very strong written history that is organized in a way that we can look back, we can't really see how far we've come. And so I'm really interested to see how the work that you're doing will help with that unification of the profession and really describe how much we have changed and where we can set our futures to.
Ooh, that's beautiful. I like that. You know what? We might steal that, put that up as one of our challenges or one of our guiding principles at some point. So yeah, that's
all yours.
All right. Dr. Amanda Baskwill, I want to thank you for joining us here at the Hands of History podcast. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. It has been a great deal of fun for me too. Thanks so much.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to the Society of Massage Archives so we can continue to bring you this episode and other resources to fulfill our mission of preserving and integrating the historical knowledge of massage therapy's professional advocacy and traditional techniques to guide and enrich our contemporary practices. Thank you. You have been listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives. You can learn more about the Society at societyofmassagearchives.org. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know someone whose hands have helped shape the practice of massage? If you or someone you know would make a great guest for future episodes of this podcast, please email the Society at societyofmassagearchives@gmail.com. Society of Massage Archives, all one word, @gmail.com.